What's going on, everybody? Welcome back into the Fantasy Football Fellas YouTube channel. My name is Lucas Wenzel, and today, 8 must-start players for Week 5 of fantasy football. 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, and 2 tight ends that should make their way into your lineups. Before we dive into those players, though, if you're not subscribed to the channel already, make sure you do that. Turn on those notifications so you can be alerted when all of our new episodes are up. A YouTube video or a podcast every single day, short form content every single day. So much content that we're releasing for you all. We want to make sure you don't miss out on it. Now, let's dive into those must-start players for the week. We're going to start the quarterback position. Jordan Love is our first start of the week at the Las Vegas Raiders. He has surprisingly been very, very good for fantasy football this year. He's currently the quarterback 4 overall. And last week against Detroit was actually the first week that he didn't have 20 fantasy points in a week. He had 19.64, so if you want to round up, call it 20. You can definitely call it 20. Basically 20 points in every single week this year. Now, he, yes, has had a little bit of help in the rushing touchdown department as well. He's had 2 over the past 2 weeks. 2 over the past 2 weeks. But I love this matchup with the Raiders in Week 5. Vegas, they're currently allowing 20 fantasy points per game to quarterbacks. That is the 9th most. Jordan Love is currently averaging 22 fantasy points per game on the season. So I find it hard to believe that Love is going to struggle in this game. I don't think he'll have any trouble finding success. He's a top 10 option across the board for all 3 of us fellas. I think he can safely be in your lineup this week if you have a quarterback that's been struggling all year long. A Joe Burrow, a Dak Prescott maybe. He's ranked ahead of Dak Prescott for us this week. Jordan Love can find his way into your lineup this week. I would start him with relative confidence. Quarterback number 2, that is a must start this week. Kirk Cousins, Kirk Thuggins, against the Kansas City Chiefs at home. Now, I honestly hate the matchup against the Chiefs here, but there is so much opportunity for garbage time. There's so much opportunity for garbage time. Zach Wilson, he was the first quarterback to actually top 15 fantasy points against the Chiefs this year, which is shocking. And Kirk is coming off, obviously, a game last week where he only had 11 fantasy points and only threw the ball, 19 times? But I digress. The Vikings defense, this is what's going to fuel Kirk to a successful fantasy day, is how bad the Minnesota Vikings defense is. Their secondary is atrocious, and they play the best quarterback in all of football. And we've seen them get torn up on the ground by DeAndre Swift. Joshua Kelly, obviously he hasn't panned out, just not that talented of an NFL runner in general. Sure, they looked okay against Carolina last week, but Miles Sanders was injured. This team can get beat up on the ground or through the air, and that's what's going to fuel Kirk Cousins to a fantasy successful day, because they're going to be chasing points here. They're going to be chasing points, which is why Kirk will likely have to air the ball out 35, 40 times like he did the first few weeks where he was over 40 passing attempts. He was putting up 25, 30 fantasy points per game. So the Vikings are just going to have to keep airing the ball out to stay pace with the Chiefs. Even though I don't like the matchup, I think this is just a volume play for Kirk. He's top 7 across the board for us this week. I think he can safely be in your lineup in a game where they're just going to be chasing points. Let's move on to the running back position now. First running back start of the week. David Montgomery against the Carolina Panthers at home. There is a real chance that we get an encore of Thursday Night Football against Green Bay, where Monty scores 3 times, has a massive day, 130 rushing yards. I'm not telling you Monty's going to go for 130 in this game, but look, he's scored in every single game this year, and the Panthers' run defense, not good. They allow the 4th most fantasy points per game to running backs. They allowed the 3rd most rushing yards, the 2nd most rushing touchdowns. Alexander Mattison went for 90-plus rushing yards last week, and he, again, similar to Josh Kelly, just not that talented of an NFL running back, just not as explosive, doesn't have the breaking tackle ability, just not sharp vision. If Alexander Mattison can run for 90, I'm just imagining what David Montgomery can do. Now, this is actually crazy. Per CBS, I found this on CBS. Every running back that has at least 10 carries against the Panthers this year has either scored a touchdown or gone for 98 rushing yards. I think Monty can hit both this week against the Panthers run defense. So I don't know how much more you want. The Lions are going to be playing ahead in this game as well at home. The defense should have little to no issue containing Bryce Young in this Panthers offense. So I think it could be another massive multi-TD day for David Montgomery, and he is a top 10 play for sure this week. He absolutely 100% needs to be in your fantasy lineups this week. Second running back start of the week. Breece Hall against the Broncos. I am so hesitant about this pick. I wouldn't lie to you. I'm hesitant about this pick, but here's what I know. I would hate myself. I would be loathing myself if I had any inkling of hope for Breece Hall against the Broncos this week, a great matchup. And if I didn't put him on this list and he goes absolutely bonkers this week, I would regret it forever. So here he is. He's in the list. Now that I put him in the list, he's probably only going to have 6 fantasy points. But outside of this phenomenal matchup, okay, there is a lot that actually goes into this Jets-Broncos matchup that you might have forgotten is actually behind the scenes here. If you believe in fired coach revenge games, if those are even a thing, they're probably not even a thing. Look, Nathaniel Hackett, he gets an opportunity for revenge against the Broncos, the team he coached last year. He's now the offensive coordinator for the Jets, right? Revenge game for Nathaniel Hackett, if you want to believe in that at all. And if you didn't hear this offseason, Sean Payton, oh my goodness, was he critical of Nathaniel Hackett and the coaching job that he did last year. So you know that's going to be boiling underneath the surface as well. And then you have the fact that Breece Hall, you want to know who he tore his ACL against last year? It was the Denver Broncos. So you got a sneaky little Breece Hall, I still got it in me game against the Broncos. So how much that actually weighs into Breece Hall's success this week, we have zero clue what percentage that actually is. But the matchup against Denver, y'all, part of it is still weighted because of the 70-point Miami game. But they are allowing the most fantasy points per game, the most rushing yards per game, the most rushing touchdowns allowed to running backs this year. Brian Robinson, Raheem Mostert, Devon Achane, and Khalil Herbert have all gone for 22-plus points over the last 3 weeks against this Denver Broncos run defense. Robert Saleh also came out and said this week, restrictions are fully off on Breece. Wheels up on Breece. He's not on a pitch count anymore. So if he doesn't have any workload limitations either, in a great matchup, frankly, do you think you want Zach Wilson tossing the ball around the yard? Put it in Breece's gut. Let him go to work against a Broncos defense that's struggling. If he pops this week, he's going to pop big. The one game that they won this year against the Bills in week 1, Breece Hall, 10 carries, 125 yards. Granted, one big, massive rush, but good things happen when you feed Breece the ball. He can make things happen in a good matchup here. So I'm going to choose to put my faith in Breece Hall despite how hesitant I may be, because there is a part of me that says, you know what? This is a Zach Wilson-led offense, though. And there is a chance he falls out. The floor falls out from underneath him. But I'm going to choose to ride with Breece Hall this week. I'm going to push my chips in there and expect a big week. Let's move on to wide receivers now. Zay Flowers is our first wide receiver start of the week against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm honestly repulsed by a lot of wide receiver matchups this week. I'm really not thrilled, but Zay Flowers is one I like despite there being 15 to 18 mile per hour winds in the forecast for this game on Sunday. The reason that really doesn't turn me off is because you look at Zay Flowers' advanced metrics this year, he's not this downfield deep threat player. His average depth of target this year is only 6.1 yards. That's 94th amongst wide receivers. He only has 176 air yards on the year, which is 65th. So it's not like they're taking these deep downfield shots with him where the ball gets caught up in the wind. These are all going to be short underneath passes, screen passes to Zay Flowers where he can make things happen, because you look at his volume and efficiency metrics, he's actually 12th in receptions this year amongst wide receivers. That's with 24 on the year, He's 12th amongst wide receivers with 24 receptions. And he has 115 yards after the catch, which is actually 14th the best. So look, this is a great matchup with Pittsburgh. I love the matchup here. They give the 4th most fantasy points per game to wide receivers. I'm still fine starting Zay Flowers because I think he bounces back after a down week against Cleveland in week 4. Again, the wind doesn't concern me. It's going to be short passes anyways that Lamar's going to have to, contain. So this is, Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers are going to be the beneficiaries of that. I'm fine starting up Zay in week 4. I think this is a great matchup that you can fire him up in. Second wide receiver start of the week. I'm going back to the well. Michael Pittman Jr. It's my second wide receiver start of the week. I know he disappointed last week, but this is one of the very few wide receiver matchups I am not repulsed by this week because it's just too easy to pick on the Tennessee Titans secondary. 7th most fantasy points per game allowed to wide receivers. 7th most receiving yards allowed. 4th most receptions allowed. Now, again, we look at last week. Michael Pittman, he had a down week, right? Richardson only completed 44% of his passes. Of course, Michael Pittman wasn't going to benefit from that. But this is the perfect game for him to bounce back in after seeing 34 targets and 25 receptions through the first 3 games of the season. You look at his previous outings, against the Titans in his career, not just this year because this is the first time they're playing, but in the first 2 years of his career, 12 targets, 15 targets, 6 targets, 9 targets. I'm going to trust the volume is going to be there. This Titans team, regardless if Jonathan Taylor actually suits up or not, is stout against the run. They force teams to throw. So I'm going to bank on Michael Pittman as a must start, as a volume play this week, in a great matchup with the Tennessee Titans. He should be in your fantasy lineups this week. All right, let's close it out here with the tight ends. First tight end start of the week, Sam LaPorta against the Carolina Panthers. At this point, I think he should be locked into all of your fantasy lineups. This is honestly probably the last week I can get away with him being a must start on this list. So I'm going to take advantage of it. The matchup against the Panthers, okay, let's be clear. It's not juicy by any means. They're middle of the pack against tight ends this year. They've been all right. I'm far more interested in the volume of Sam LaPorta, though, and this game being at home. 5 targets, 6 targets, 11 targets, 5 targets so far this year. Week 4 was the first time that Sam LaPorta actually didn't finish as a tight end, top 8 tight end in fantasy football this year. And we know how much Jared Goff likes to play at home. In 2 home games this year, LaPorta stats, 5 for 63, 8 for 84 in 1. That one is a score. So LaPorta, he's a top 5 consensus option for us this week, and I think he should very, very confidently be in your fantasy starting lineups this week. One more tight end. We're going to bring it home. Zach Ertz against the Cincinnati Bengals. And this man, he was left for dead at the beginning of the season in favor of Trey McBride because of his injury. He was coming off of an injury last year. He's old. Trey McBride's a young, new, flashy toy that they spent second-round draft capital on. But now look at Zach Ertz. Tight end 10 in PPR formats. He's 4th in receptions with 20, 2nd in targets with 30. He's 2nd in air yards amongst all tight ends. He's 1st in tight end target share. I am baffled that this man is only rostered in 47% of Yahoo leagues and only 62% of ESPN leagues. This is a top 10 tight end at a position that lacks upside, that lacks consistency, sitting on the waiver wire in like half of leagues. That baffles me. He's not big, flashy, sexy, but he's consistent, okay? He's consistent at a position that desperately needs consistency, and he's giving you top 10 numbers. Now, again, we look at the matchup. He draws the Bengals this week. They're giving up 15.25 fantasy points per game to tight ends this year. That is the 6th most, and this is a game I think the Cardinals can definitely and will hang in, considering Joe Burrow likely still won't be playing at 100% in this game. He hasn't been near 100% healthy. So Ertz, he's my tight end 8 this week. I think he has top 5 upside. Tyler has him all the way up at 3. I would push back a little bit on that, but clearly we believe in Zach Ertz this week, and this is a perfectly fine matchup that they're going to hang with the Bengals in, where you can fire up Zach Ertz, and he will be a consistent option for your lineup this week. Alrighty, y'all, that is all I have. Those are our 8 must-start players in fantasy football this week. Remember, if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel already, make sure you do that and turn on those notifications so you know when videos like this go up, when the podcast goes up, when shorts go up every single day, sometimes even twice a day. Make sure you subscribe to know when all those videos are coming up, y'all. We will be back next week. More waiver ads, more reactions to week 5, more buy low, sell high, more best matchups, more everything. We're not stopping with content, y'all. We'll see you all next week. Deuces.